Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. Brian Winnikins from the NAFB convention, and thank you to our convention sponsors, including Alcivia Co-op, also Osteoplastics, Annabis Silo, the Animal Wellness Center of Buffalo Valley, Compeer Financial, and Synergy Co-op. Joining us right now, Eathan Lane. He is with the Vice President of Government Affairs from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and talk about a little bit about the election. And Eathan, thanks for joining us while election's over. All right. It's like, didn't we just get done doing this? Now we gotta start re-educating all these new people again. It's just like a never-ending thing.
Oh yeah, the election season never ends for us in Washington anymore. But you kind of get a reset every once in a while, and that's kind of where we are now. We're still waiting for a few of those races to resolve in California, but we do know that there are enough votes now. There are enough members for Republicans to take control of the House, albeit by a very narrow margin. And we know that the Senate is going to be at least 50-50, if not maybe 51 votes or members for the Democrats, depending on how that race in Georgia settles out during the runoff. And that really does kind of give us a chance to reevaluate what kind of landscape we're going to have moving into next year for cattle producers around the country, for ag policy. You know, presumptive Speaker McCarthy is currently involved in what I guess I would call a negotiation with the Freedom Caucus and that far right wing of his party to try to figure out what that governing structure is going to look like. They're asking for some concessions. They want more control. They want to limit his ability to do any kind of deal making across party lines. And they're looking for different ways to exert some of that influence. We've seen that before. Speaker Boehner had a similar construct with the Tea Party when they came in. Paul Ryan was able to kind of broker the same kind of deal when he became Speaker. Kevin McCarthy was in the mix then as well. So this isn't a new conversation, but certainly with margins this narrow, it's going to be a really important factor for what kind of Congress we're going to see next year. You know, it's going to be flat funding for the Farm Bill. We already knew that. But we have a lot of new fiscal conservatives coming in that have been pretty clear about the fact that they don't have a whole lot of interest in voting for $1 trillion farm bill. So we have a big education task in front of us to help them understand what kind of programs in that bill are important to producers. It's not just a nutrition bill, right? It's not just SNAP funding. There's a lot of important things for agriculture in there as well. In particular, looking at some of those conservation programs, disaster funding, a massive increase in the use of risk management tools for cattle producers, FMD Vaccine Bank continued funding to ensure that the problems we're seeing in Indonesia and elsewhere don't become problems here in the United States. There's some big ticket items in there that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. And of course, inflation. Everything in that $800 billion farm bill last time is now $1 trillion. And so accounting for that, just to keep level funding for those programs, is going to be a big challenge for G.T. Thompson as he becomes the next chairman of the Ag Committee.
Ethan, is there a challenge here because you're going to have to work with really other farm groups because I've seen this movie before. Well, we got to cut the USDA's budget, but don't take my program. And I mean, that's going to be a problem here. And really, even with the federal budget, it's, we got to reduce spending, but my program's important, that one isn't. And that's where we get into a lot of problems here.
Yeah, the NIMBY principle, not in my backyard. And that's always going to be kind of a problem. It's particularly so, as you said, in a deal like this where there's just not enough money to go around. G.T. Thompson has been really clear about the fact that nothing is off the table, but he doesn't think we should be stepping away from the idea that some programs are going to need more and others might need less. And I think he's been really good about being open that, hey, we need to have those conversations and we need to figure out where that need is and how we get things allocated in a way that everybody gets what they need for their programs. That's the right approach. That's the right way to start this conversation. Let's see what the need is. We're way behind on oversight of the last farm bill. You know, this is a point that's been made over and over again in the last year. We should have 100 field hearings and listening sessions and review sessions by now under our belts so that we know where those numbers are. We're late on that. And incoming Chairman Thompson has made it clear that's going to be right at the top of his priority list. He's going to hit the ground running with aggressive hearings right out of the gate in January to get to the bottom of some of that so that they can formulate some of those opinions.
It's going to be an interesting time, and don't forget, it doesn't matter what the House does. If the Senate says, that's great, but no, we don't like that. And now they're going to have, at some point, Republicans are going to have to work with Democrats no matter what the Freedom Caucus says. I mean, that is the reality.
It absolutely is. And, I mean, I was talking about this with a friend of mine who also has a campaign background, and we were talking about the fact that some of these new members come in and what sounds really good on the campaign trail, then meets the reality of Washington, D.C. And there's two different ways you can go. You can kind of put your head in the sand and say, I don't work with anybody, and I'm no on everything, and I vote no on all these bills. And you can do that, and you can stay in Congress if you're in the right district for a really long time doing that, but you're never going to have any real influence on the process. And then you have members who figure out, okay, there's more to it, and I do need to figure out a way to work across the aisle. That doesn't mean you step away from your principles. Doesn't mean you step away from what your constituents have sent you there to do, but it does mean you have to have recognition of the reality that there are other people that have been sent by different constituents that have different perspectives. And that's the whole point, right, of everybody being there to try to figure those things out and find some policy compromises. And those are the members that you see be successful and grow their influence and grow their efficacy in Washington. So we'll be looking for ways we can help some of those more strident new members figure that out. We saw Andy Biggs challenge McCarthy for Speaker in that conference vote earlier this week. I don't know that I've ever seen Andy Biggs sponsor a piece of legislation since he's been in Congress. And I'm from Arizona, and so I have my own personal feelings about that. But, for him to be contemplated as a Speaker of the House with no real legislative record to speak for his time in Congress really, is a little bit puzzling. But that's where we're at, and that's the conversation we're going to have to work through to make sure that presumptive Speaker McCarthy has the tools he needs to be successful.
That is Eathan Lane. He's Vice President of Government Affairs with National Cattlemen's Beef Association from the NAFB Convention in Kansas City. I'm Brian Winnikins for WRDN.